Hello everyone, welcome to a brand new video on allergies. So in this video we are going to discuss how allergies happen. So to do that we want to first define what are allergies, what is an allergen, then we're going to look at what happens to the first and then the second exposure to said allergen. So as we get started, an allergy, what is an allergy? If you have someone you know who has allergies, an allergy is going to be this excessive or unwanted kind of immune response to a foreign substance. Now, allergies, they are going to be excessive. Okay, so let's say, for example, with an allergy, this is an excessive response, such as excessive inflammation that can actually cause it difficult to breathe, and some allergies can be fatal, resulting in like anaphylaxis. Now, as we talk about this, the allergy is an excessive immune response, and what we are saying is to an allergen, which we might say to an allergen, which an allergen is going to be any kind of foreign substance that you might be able to run into. You might be able to happen to cause some kind of allergic response. Now, allergens are very common things. A very common type of allergen is pollen. The part of the world that I live in, this is a really bad time for allergies. Pollen is very high in the air. We oftentimes get air quality warnings about the pollen levels where I live right now. And but this could be things also like dust, for example, the dust in one's house, dog fur, pet fur, fur of a cat, even food, for example, gluten allergies, peanut allergy, things that are in. So what happens is with an allergy, with this allergen, you become hypersensitive. So this excessive immune response to an allergen, and it results in you becoming hypersensitive. And this can cause issues, like I said, with breathing, things like that. So let's really look at this, and we're going to break it down into two basic things. We are going to look at what happens during two phases of allergy. One will be our first response to the allergen, and the second one, then our second exposure, our first exposure and our second exposure. What happens the very first time we see an allergen in our body? Now, when I see allergens in the body, one of the common things that we're going to use as an example of an allergen is we're going to use a pollen grain, a grain of pollen. Let's say this is pollen in the atmosphere, in the air you breathe, and this pollen ends up being inhaled by you, by the individual. And what happens with this pollen is inside the body, there are a variety of these large cells, which are macrophages that act as an antigen presenting cell. Now, if you don't really understand this process, I have a video on that on here so that you guys can watch it as well. And so basically what's going to happen is antigen-presenting cells, phagocytic cells, will bring these things in. They will go through, present the antigens on this allergen, our allergen in this case being pollen, and eventually they will help co-stimulate any kind of cell floating around that we have called helper T cells. So our T cells are CD4 and CD8 T cells that you would have. Remember, if this is an antigen presenting cell, it makes an MHC2. 2 times 4 equals 8. So this is a CD4 T cell. And so this T cell here will be given this antigen through MHC, through co-stimulation. And basically, we are going to make this thing become a helper T cell, okay? And this helper T cell, what it's going to do is helper T cell is going to go out and it's going to find like normal antigen presentation. We want to be able to find a B cell. So this helper T cell will go on and we will have a B cell that we might have. Now this B cell, we know that B cells possess a thing on them called an IgD, which serves as the receptor for said allergens. Now, for example, my pollen over here that I've been discussing, it could end up coming over, and this pollen could show up and bind, part of it at least, to the IgD. And what is going to happen is with the IgD and the helper T cell. So this IgD has to see the pollen grain and has to bring in the pollen proteins. It has to take that, displayed on MHC2 to say that this B cell has been sensitized. Then the sensitized T cell, or the sensitized B cell rather, will come in with the helper T cell. So our B cell and helper T cell come together, and we can activate this into becoming a plasma cell. And this plasma cell will end up making antibodies that it will secrete when it becomes plasma cell through normal action, normal activation. It becomes an IgE. Now, we know that they make IgGs to attack specific antigens. This is the IgE. Now, the IgE, what's going to happen with this IgE is rather, is totally fascinating. What this IgE is going to do is, if I have out here floating around a mast cell, and this mast cell, I'm going to make it incredibly granular. It's going to have all these granules. These little IgEs that are made by my plasma cells will stick to it, and they're going to stick to these mast cells, and we're going to be able to have these as a receptor. So my mast cell that I have, my mast cell, it is now ready to go for a second exposure. So let's say that my pollen shows up a second time. And this pollen shows up a second time, and it comes along and binds to one of these surface IgEs. Now, again, we said this IgE, it was made by the plasma cell, but it binds to this mast cell. And when it does, it will initiate intracellular changes. And what's going to happen is all these little granules that are inside. When we talk about these little things here called granules, remember, all a granule is these little things like vesicles or lysosomes that contain different chemical compounds. And among these granules will dump out through a process called degranulation. So you will see degranulation of my mast cells, and they are dumping out these chemicals. Now, these chemicals can be a slew of things. One of the common things that gets released is heparin. And heparin, sorry, I need to there we go. Heparin. You might have leukotrienes, and you also may have your prostaglandins. And these all cause the inflammation responses that we know during allergy. So they're going to all cause inflammation. And that inflaming is what you're going to notice during your allergy fits when you have allergies and a stuffy nose and things like that. The swelling of the airway that can make it worse. So at very first, when your pollen shows up the first time, as your body begins to antigen presenting cells, macrophagic cells begin to clean those pollen grains out, they will act as antigen presenting cell to go to a helper T cell and activate that helper T cell. Helper T cell will then go out and find a B cell that has gotten sensitized to the same pollen, and what's going to happen is it will activate the B cell. B cell will make IgEs. These IgEs then will stick to the mast cells, and the mast cells will have those IgEs on them, and those will act as allergen receptors that will lead to degranulation and inflammation through using things like heparin, leukotrienes, and prostaglandins. So this completes a very short but hopefully useful video on allergies and how they come about. So if you would like to see other topics from me, please let me know what you'd like to see. I have all kinds of things I would love to do and talk about with you guys. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to just give me a like rating if you guys like what I do. Let me know what you'd like to see in future videos. But always, just thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.